All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Training for Hiking live Q&A. My name is Rowan, and as always, today I'm answering your questions around training for hiking. Now, today's call is going to be relatively short. I've got to duck out, at lunch. I've got a few bits and pieces, but I have had a couple of questions sent through to me, which I'm going to be covering. Plus, if anyone does join me live who wants anything particularly covered, I will send it through to them. So, first question, we'll get right into all of the questions we're going to be covering today is we're going to be talking a little bit about what you can do is if you are wanting to do more during a training plan. And also talking a little bit about the tibialis anterior, so the front of the shin and training that. So the first question was basically, hi Rowan, I'm currently following a training plan for a big hike I have. But I know I should stick to the plan and I trust it will get me where I want to be. But I feel like I should be doing more. Any thoughts? And this is a really, really common situation a lot of people get themselves into in the sense that when we have a big goal ahead and when we have a big adventure in our sights, a lot of us, if we have the time and inclination, we kind of feel like we should be doing everything we can to get ready for it. We kind of want to be doing more and more and more and more and more. And a lot of the times, if we have a training plan and something's written up for us and something that's going to be getting us where we need to be, it can be all well and good. And we can, in the back of our head, be like, logically, I know this is enough to get me where I want to be, but I kind of a bit restless. I kind of want to do a little bit more. And a lot of people run into this. So we'll talk through a few ideas on this. Now, realistically, if you are following a training plan, which has been created for you, so it's been created with your specific outcome in mind and created in a way that's going to, be personalized for you and your needs, 9 out of 10 times of these training plans are going to be enough to get you where you want to be. Because if you've chat with a coach and you've said, I want to train for Kilimanjaro and I have 12 weeks and I have these issues and these things and this and that, the coach should take that into account and should create something that they are confident that if you follow will get you where you need to be. Um, as long as it's personalized to you. If you're just pulling something off the internet, that may be a little bit different or whatever it may be. And if you are in this situation, you've got this plan, and you're like, I kind of want to do a little bit more, there obviously is the temptation to add things on top. Because you're like, well, if following the plan is going to get me where I need to be, if I just do more and more and more, I'll be in a better chance. And this can be fine in certain situations, but it can also potentially be a little bit detrimental because, in certain ways that a coach designs things, they may have intentionally designed your program and your plan to be really, really intentional around managing how much you're doing. They may be really, really trying to manage your load that's going through your feet so you don't get a risk of ramping up discomfort. They may be thinking, okay, look, all of this stuff in the week, we're planning out in a way which we do hard sessions and easy sessions and this and that, so your energy can bounce back. They may be aware in your personal situation, you've got stress issues or sleep issues or something going on. So they may have created things very much intentional. And for a lot of my clients that I work with, when we create personalized programs, um, for a lot of people who are these kind of overachievers who really want to do more and more and more and more and more, a lot of the value that we have in our programming isn't so much of trying to get them to do enough and fit in training, but it's actually holding them back doing too much and actually giving them clear guidelines saying, I only want you doing this because this will get you where you need to be and this will reduce the risk of flaring up overuse injuries, which you have such a big history of, or whatever it is. So if something's been personalized to you, usually it's a good case of following that. However, if you are getting itchy feet, if you are getting restless and you're like, I want to do more and more and more, and also you do have the time and inclination to do more on top of you, that's fine. There are a couple of options where we can do here. First and foremost, I would always say is like chat with your coach and see their opinion. If someone's written up a plan for you, just ask them. This is usually the best place, and they can give you specific recommendations to work around your plan and this and that to add on top. Alternatively, if you're in the situation where maybe you just don't have communication open with a coach, maybe you just bought a plan, they personalized something, and they're like, hey, away you go, or maybe there's limited communication or whatever it may be, there are a few options where you can kind of add on, which is generally pretty safe. Generally, what you can add in is just sort of what add in on top what we call low impact training. So training which can move you forward, that can be positive in certain areas, but won't have a huge impact on your joints, won't have a huge impact in your recovery, won't have a huge impact in your energy, and it's going to be a really simple thing where you can just add into what you're doing. So on the cardio side of things, if you're like, hey, I'm preparing for a big hike, I'm doing cardio in the training, but kind of feel like I do more, I need to do more, Simple options, you could do some cycling, hop on a stationary bike or get an outdoor push bike and just do some gentle cycling. Do some swimming, do some elliptical or whatever it may be, but stuff that isn't going to put extra stress through the feet because as a hike, we often are trying to manage that. And also that isn't going to be too strenuous, low intensity, long duration. Now, the beauty of this type of training, it may not feel like it's doing a huge amount, but this lower intensity training can be really, really, really beneficial to developing certain aspects of fitness, which will help us with our hiking. And we can layer a lot of this on top of what you may be doing without a huge amount of impact on your energy, huge amount of impact on your joints. Now, you may be looking at this, you're like, Rowan, why isn't walking in there? Why isn't hiking in there? That is low intensity. And the reason I say that, sometimes that's fine to add that on top. Sometimes, if we are trying to manage how much stress going through the feet, that may not be great. So, cycling, swimming, elliptical, really good options. Could also add things like kayaking or paddleboarding or whatever it may be, anything that's low intensity, low impact. Other options you could layer on top, stretching or gentle yoga. So not strenuous yoga that's making you tired, but stuff that's gentle, relaxing, rejuvenating. You can never really do too much of this type of stuff as long as it's not impacting your other types of training. Or you can sort of look at, other sessions where you work on accessory work. And what I mean by that accessory work is working on areas of the body which aren't your main priorities. It isn't just overloading your legs and doing more and more and more of the same type of training. There's just other areas which aren't really a priority, but you may get some benefits working on. So, for example, core. You can layer on core training on top of most training programs. I personally, for the most part, don't really love standalone core sessions where hikers will do 20 minutes or 30 minutes of just core training. I usually dose it into their training plans in one way or another. But for people in these situations, I'll often load in core plan. It's not my first choice for a lot of people, but if they have more time, more inclination, they can have extra core stuff each day or every couple of days, can work out pretty well. Or grip, like this isn't super relevant for hikers, but it might be for mountaineers or climbers or whatever it may be. Maybe we'll just do some extra grip training where we're specifically just working the grip and getting some strength there. Or maybe doing a bit of extra arm training. Again, for hikers, not a massive priority, but doing arm training, a lot of people like, and it won't really pull back away from the other areas of the training. So we can kind of look at that, just adding in extra low impact training. Most of that stuff's pretty safe to add on top. Now, and yeah, and as long as your energy isn't being impacted week by week, that's all pretty good. Now, one thing I would sort of say is the mistake I often see from people with this, and they're like, okay, I just want to add more and more and more and more and more, is they end up adding in exercise, which may not be amazing. And what they do is they add in extra higher impact exercises. So things that may have more effect on their energy or may have more effect on their joints. So the most common example of this is running, in the sense that my hikers, they'll be doing all this training, we'll go all programmed out, and then I'm like, hey, I'll do a little bit more. And they pick up running and they do 1 or 2 or 3 runs in the week, which is fine if it doesn't affect you. But the running puts a lot of extra stress through their feet, a lot of extra stress through the shins, a lot of extra stress through the knees. And if we're already trying to balance out how much stress is going through there, running can often tip things over. Or it may be hit, depending on how you do it. If you're jumping around or whatever it may be, it may put stress through certain areas, but definitely impacts your energy. So that may impact other areas of the training. Or even doing like heavier or difficult like strength work, where you're doing sessions and it's just like more difficult, it will affect certain things. Now, all of these things, there's nothing wrong with doing these in general, but they may impact the balance of your training program. So if you've got a plan and you're working with a coach and you want to include this or you want to do more of this type of stuff, be guided with your coach and just say, I want to do running, what can I do here? Or I want to do an extra hit, what can I do here? And they can give you some recommendations. They can adjust the other training so it doesn't impact things. So ultimately, if you do fall into this situation where you just want to layer more and more on top, it's usually fine, but as long as you choose the right options and it doesn't end up being detrimental to all the good stuff you're doing with your training. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, next question is we're going to be covering the tibialis anterior, which is it's an interesting subject. And the question I got was, I heard training the shins, which is the shins is basically your tibialis anterior, that muscle on the front of the shins, is really important for hikers. Is that true? Now, let me just type it into Google and I'll just pull it up. Tibialis, sorry about the right screen. Tibialis anterior. I didn't spell it very well. But basically, this is the tibialis anterior, this muscle on the front of the shin coming down. Now, this is a really, really interesting muscle because online, if you're on Instagram, if you're on YouTube, There are a lot of people out there who talk about this being the most important muscle for anything you're doing, the most important muscle for your knees, the most important muscle for your running, the most important muscle for your hiking. And if you just train this one muscle, it will do everything under the sun. It's not quite like that. The fitness industry got very, very carried away with this particular muscle. To be clear, this muscle, it is valuable, it is important for hikers in certain situations, but most of what you see online is a bit overblown. Most of what you see online, if you're just looking at reels or whatever, it's really, really overblown. It is not a magic muscle. And in the grand scheme of things for hikers, it is important, but it's not a top priority. So training this can be beneficial in certain situations, but it's not something that everyone has to do. Now, ultimately, the role of this muscle, two big things. Number one, its role is to dorsiflex the foot. So essentially just pull the foot upwards. Very, very relevant for hikers in certain situations. It's also relevant for inverting the foot. So basically inverting the foot, going inside and doing some certain things there. So it is responsible for certain movements through the foot, helping the ankle in certain situations, helping support the arches in certain situations, or whatever it may be. So I wouldn't sort of say with this that every single hiker needs to be training this, but there are a few certain situations where it can be beneficial. The main benefits for hikers who will get benefit. The main hikers who will get benefits from training this and isolating this and spending more time on this are going to be hikers who do get sore or tired shins on days with lots and lots of uphill. Because if this muscle is responsible for pulling your foot up, and when we're going uphill, we're doing a lot of that. If that's getting sore and tired when you're going uphill, well, it makes sense that we want to train this. Another situation that I'll often see is when hikers get sore or tired shins if they're hiking at quicker paces. One thing that will happen is as we're going at quicker and quicker and quicker paces, that muscle will work a little bit more in different situations, can get tired. So in that situation, it may be worthwhile putting a bit of attention to it. Another situation is if a hiker struggles with ankle or foot pain, this muscle does play a role in supporting the ankle, supporting the feet in various situations, so it can be useful there. And it can be something for hikers who struggle with knee pain. Online, if you would believe it, it often just says, hey, this is a missing muscle for your knees. And if you just train on this muscle, it'll help your knees. In all honesty, it is a very low priority in regards to muscles for your knees. Your quads, your hamstrings, your glutes, your calves, they're the top priorities for your knees. If you're covering all of that, then you may consider training the shins for this, but just to be clear. Now, one thing to be clear, for hikers, a lot of hikers will naturally strengthen these up when they're doing things like stair or hill sessions, or when they're doing things like step sessions, or when they're hiking, because the shins will get a lot of exposure this type of stuff. But if you do struggle in any of these areas, it may be worthwhile in your strength training, just doing a little bit of work to strengthen. So with that being said, how do you strengthen this? Well, very simple. A really simple place to start, and you've probably seen this online somewhere, is what's called a tibialis raise. So essentially this exercise, really simple. You're kind of just leaning against a wall, got your legs straight, and all you're really doing, feet start straight, and you basically just pull your shins up and squeeze, pull your feet up and squeeze your shins. Then slowly lower, then pull your feet up, squeeze your shins. This is a really simple introduction to this because you can basically just get that muscle moving, you can concentrate, you can just get a little bit of movement through it, can be quite beneficial. Now, the key to this exercise, because it can be really simple and really easy, is essentially just make sure when you're doing it, you're concentrating on a slow raise. Slow lower. You'll often see people online just doing rep and just banging it out really quickly. I would argue it's much more beneficial if we concentrate on the slow lower. So as we're coming down, aiming for like 3 or 4 seconds. On top of that, because this is such an easy exercise for a lot of people, to get a bit of stimulus through it, we really want to just concentrate on squeezing the shins. So as you're coming up, really think about that muscle squeezing, get a bit of tension on the way up. At the top, squeeze it nice and tight. And then on the way down, keep tension in the shins. So you want to put a little bit of attention and thought into this as you go through. And you may start off doing like 15 repetitions of this with a 4-second lower. Do that for a few weeks. It can be a good starting point. Now, the mistake a lot of people make with this type of training is they're like, okay, cool, I'll just do that over and over. As with any type of training, any type of strength training, progression is key. If we want to keep it getting stronger, if we want to keep it getting moving forward, we want to introduce more stimulus. For a lot of people, this will be way too easy after a couple of weeks. And you'll be like, well, I'm not getting really anything from this. So we want to think about how we can make this a bit tougher. First place where you can look at progression is just wearing boots. If you have hiking boots at home, just whacking them on and doing this can be a really simple thing. because boots are generally heavier than your shoes or generally heavier than your barefoot. And you can whack on the boots, adds a little bit extra um, weight, and it can be a really good option. Or if for one reason or another you've got like ankle weights hanging around, you could wear your normal shoes and just put your ankle weights around the front of your feet. Just add a little bit of load there. Very, very, very useful. And I'm going to share this exercise in chat while we're going through. From there, once you've done that a little bit, then you probably want to progress to some way of loading up the shins a little bit more. It's quite difficult unless you have certain equipment, but a really simple way that most people have access to is doing like a banded option. So this is the one that I get a lot of my hikers doing, where we'll basically get like a pole or like a chair leg or whatever it may be, get a bit of a band. And what we're doing is the same type of movement, but we're just loading up with a band. And basically just coming slow and in, bringing up and down, up and down. It's a really, really simple way of loading this up, and this can be a nice progression moving into the next thing. And I'll share that exercise in chat. And essentially with that, you slowly ramp up the resistance. So a progression scheme of this, you may do 3 weeks of the body weight thing, just wearing barefoot or light shoes. You may do 3 weeks wearing your boots with a little extra resistance. You may do 3 weeks with the bands and then just with a really, really light band. You may do 3 weeks with a heavier band and a thicker band. And that's a logical 12-week progression where you can slowly get stronger and stronger and stronger. And if you're doing that in conjunction with stair and hill climbing, in conjunction with your hiking, 9 times out of 10, that'll kind of sort you out. So when it comes down to the shins, they can be beneficial in certain situations. I wouldn't say every hiker needs to be doing it, but it can be useful for certain things here. So hopefully that makes sense. So with that being said, I think I'm going to wrap things up here. I haven't had any extra questions come through, and this is kind of what I had sorted for today. So I will sort of say, moving forward, if anyone does have any questions they would like me to cover in future calls, feel free to reach out, post up in our group, send me an email, whatever it may be. I'm happy to cover them. But I'm going to wrap things up here today. So for anyone watching, hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you got a bit out of it, and have a lovely day. And we'll talk to you all very soon.